He needs his vote pulled immediately. And I'll say, I don't care. The leader, the boss. Where is Josh Heupel? The largest humans he can find. You got Miami and Georgia and Florida State and Tennessee and Texas A&M. Kirby wants you. LSU and Ole Miss. Not even a football player, but he's 6'10", 334. Kirby said, sign me up. That's all they've got to offer when it comes to a defensive player. What could they possibly say other than, how down do you have to be for a win? Let us pay you. All they got to be is enormous. What could they possibly say? Knock the team out west. Oh, well. They'll take him if they're lowly rated, too. I'm not some guy who's some Big Ten homer. Behind that, I will never find it acceptable. I want to see it, man, because they've got nothing else to go on. Hey, it's Juck. Thanks for joining me. There are so many things about college football that I love. Some things I absolutely can't stand. And one of the things I can't stand is the way the college football media is structured. So you've got these two major sites in 247 and On3, right? They're the parents. And then they've got little subsidiaries that are kind of independent, but affiliated with them that cover every team. So for instance, the Ohio State 247 site is called Bucknuts. The Oregon On3 site is called Scoop Duck. And On3 and 247 each have all of these sites that cover the team, and then they have the parent. And oftentimes you will see these smaller sites they employ sometimes some really good reporters, and sometimes some that are just fresh out of school, some that are just not very good at all, and some that peddle in a lot of innuendo and rumor, because a lot of times that's what their public wants. That's what the people who subscribe want. They're trying to ask you to pay $10 a month to get behind a paywall. And a lot of times it's information you can find on Twitter and break just as fast on Twitter as it does on their sites. So it's tough to sell these things, and they push the envelope at times. Now, that's the structure, and the structure causes a lot of bunk reporting, in my opinion, misleading headlines. And what happens is these misleading headlines get picked up by the major player. So in this particular instance, in the story I'm about to tell, Sooner Scoop, you may or may have not have heard that Jim Knowles is apparently a big-time candidate, and there's big talks between him and Oklahoma to become their defensive coordinator. Now, when you first hear that, you immediately go through a checklist. Okay, how would this make sense for Jim Knowles? How would this make sense for Oklahoma? Well, of course, it would make sense for Oklahoma. Brent Venables wants a defensive coordinator. Jim Knowles is the best defensive coordinator. So sure, it makes sense from their standpoint. Let's put ourselves in Jim Knowles' shoes. He is the third highest paid assistant coach in the country, not defensive coordinator, assistant coach, period. That includes offensive coordinators. He is currently in the national championship with his defense that he built from scratch, and it's year 3. So 3 years to get from that point where they weren't so hot to this point where they're the best in the country. He's not from Oklahoma. He does have some family ties, but he's a Philadelphia guy. He's an East Coast guy. How about his head coach? Do they get along? Yes, they get along very well. Are there any issues on the staff? Well, there have been suspected issues between him and Larry Johnson that aren't actually issues between him and Larry Johnson. Jim Knowles walked into the job at Ohio State knowing that he was walking in playing a 4-man front. And that's the issue Larry has. He wants it to remain a 4-man front at all times because he doesn't want to pull one of his guys off the field. That's never been an issue for Jim Knowles. Jim Knowles has worked around it and worked his defense around it, and he's been successful doing that. But it wouldn't be an issue anyway, because that all changed after the Oregon game this year when Ryan Day basically said, we're doing whatever the hell we need to do. I don't care about a 4-man front anymore. And Ryan Day has since talked about next year moving to more 3-man fronts. And we'll see plenty of that. And we've seen that both in recruiting. You know, they've recruited to a 4-man front. We've seen some different moves in recruiting suggesting that they are moving to a little more 3-man front and getting more multiple on their defensive line. So if it was an issue, it's not anymore. And it wasn't an issue for Jim Knowles in the first place. So let's move on. This offseason, Matt Guerrieri, safeties coach, he was hired, And that is 100% a Jim Knowles guy and was without a doubt a Jim Knowles hire. That took place while Jim Knowles was potentially flirting with Duke for the Duke head coaching job. And in a lot of people's opinion, it was a, here, have your guy, kind of, a little bit of enticement. Stay here, run your defense. I'll let you go get your guy. And he did. He went and got McElreary, his guy as the safeties coach. What else? Well, he was coaching linebackers in 2023, and James Laurinaitis was assisting him as a GA. There was a special teams coordinator on staff, Parker Fleming. Ryan Day let his contract expire and let him walk. And instead of hiring a new special teams coordinator, he promoted James Laurinaitis to the linebackers coach permanently, and Jim Knowles no longer has to coach linebackers. Jim Knowles also does not recruit a lick at all. Basically, everything is perfect for Jim Knowles in his career right now, unless maybe he wants to be a head coach. But as far as a defensive coordinator, he's the highest paid, running the best defense with the most talent, doesn't have to recruit, has his guys, has it made at a top 3 program in the country. Now, in what world would that guy want to leave and go for a rebuild in Oklahoma? I don't know. So it doesn't make sense to me. Now, after I did that checklist in my head, I went to find the source, and I found the source. Here's the source of where this rumor is coming from and why I can't stand the college football media. This comes from Sooner Scoop. Here's the article from Sooner Scoop. One name, well, let me show you the headline first. Is Jim Knowles a serious candidate for OU's football defensive coordinator opening? One name that continues to circulate. Is Ohio State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles. According to Sooner Scoop sources, Knowles would be a candidate OU's administration and Coach Brent Venables is interested in. Of course, Brent Venables would be interested in the best defensive coordinator with the best defense in the country. Anybody would be if they could afford him, and Oklahoma can. But any talks between Knowles and Oklahoma at this point are still exploratory and in their infancy. Landing Knowles in Norman would be a difficult task. He currently makes $2.2 million in Columbus, making him the 3rd highest paid assistant in college football with 2 years remaining on his contract. He also helped Ohio State reach the semifinals of the college football playoff. Sooner Scoop reached out to sources to see how extensive any talks have been up to this point, and it became clear just how preliminary the situation is. Knowles becoming a serious candidate could fall apart as quickly as it developed. It didn't develop. It's gone nowhere, as they just admit how preliminary the situation is. There's absolutely nothing here. There's no story here. They posted a headline. The headline got picked up by the main site, the parent, and it spread all around. And now there's a lot of people who think that Jim Knowles in Oklahoma are in talks the week of the national championship. Total bunk, total garbage, total nonsense reporting, misleading headline, and absolute hogwash. Jim Knowles may go somewhere, but if he does, it is not relevant at all to this story or that situation. Nothing has happened to this point. There have been no talks whatsoever, other than maybe them reaching out to his agent and saying, we'd love to talk to Jim if he's interested. That's it. End of story. Hey, it's Juck.
Juck? Who is Juck?
Juckonbucks.
Juckonbucks. Juckonbucks?
Juck.
Juckonbucks.
My guy, Juck.
Juckonbucks.
My buddy Juck.
Juck is the Juck.
It's Juckonbucks.
Okay. Juck is junk.
The Juck Eyes.
Juck Eyes.
Juckonbucks.
Junk. Juck. Not junk. Juck.